Janavalava Girivaradari Yasodananda Parijamuna Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada. Also the seats with AC box with on the sound for Prabhupada ki jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur ki jai. Pramsaka Hall Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Kopita Shama Kunda Radha Koda Giri Govardhan ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadap Dham ki jai. Ganga Jamuna Tulsi Bhakti Devi ki jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Go Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Buddhade Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswata Devi Gauravani Prachadane Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 41, verse 29. Prasada Shikara Ruda Prityu Phula Mukambuja Abhyavarshan Salmanasai Pramada Balakeshava. Prasada of the mansions, Shikara, to the roofs, Aruda, having climbed, Priti, with affection, Utfula, blooming, Mukha, their faces, humble jaw, which were like lotuses. Abhya Varshan, they showered. Salmanasyai, with flowers. Pramada, attractive women. Bala Keshava, Balaram and Krishna. Their lotus faces blooming with affection, the ladies who had climbed to the roofs of the mansions rained down showers of flowers upon Lord Balaram and Lord Krishna. Brahmanas standing along the way honored the two lords with presentations of yogurt, unbroken barley corns, pots of full water, garlands, fragrant substances such as sandalwood paste, and other items of worship. The women of Mathura explained, "Oh, what severe austerities the gopis must have performed to be able to regularly see Krishna and Balaram, who are the greatest source of pleasure for all mankind." Seeing a washerman approaching who had been dyeing some clothes, Krishna asked him for the finest laundered garments he had. Lord Krishna said, "Please give suitable garments to the two of us who certainly deserve them. If you grant this charity, you will undoubtedly receive the greatest benefit." Thus requested by the Supreme Lord, who is perfectly complete in all respects. The arrogant servant of the king became angry and replied insultingly. The washerman said, "You impudent boys, you are accustomed to roaming the mountains and forests, and yet you would dare put on such clothes as these. These are the king's possessions you're asking for. Fools, get out of here quickly. Don't beg like this if you want to stay alive. When someone is too bold, the king's men arrest him and kill him and take all his property." As the washerman thus spoke brazenly, the son of Devaki became angry, and then merely with his fingertips he separated the man's head from his body. The washerman's assistants all dropped their bundles of clothes and fled down the road, scattering in all directions. Lord Krishna then took the clothes. Krishna and Balaram put on the pairs of garments that especially pleased them, and then Krishna distributed the remaining clothes among the cowherd boys, leaving some scattered on the ground. Thereupon a weaver came forward and, feeling affection for the lords, nicely adorned their attire with cloth ornaments of various colors. Purport, Jiva Goswami explains that the weaver adorned the lords with cloth armlets and earrings that looked just like jewels. The word anurupata indicates that the colors matched nicely. Krishna and Balaram look resplendent, each in his own unique way. Wonderfully ornamented outfit. They resembled a pair of young elephants, one white and the other black, decorated for a festive occasion. Pleased with the weaver, the Supreme Lord Krishna blessed him that after death he would achieve the liberation of attaining a form like the Lord's, and that while in this world he would enjoy supreme opulence, physical strength, influence, memory, and sensory vigor. The two lords then went to the house of the garland maker, Sudama. When Sudama saw them, he at once stood up and then bowed down, placing his head on the ground. After offering them seats and bathing their feet, Sudama worshipped them and their companions with arghya, garlands, pan, sandalwood paste, and other presentations. Sudama said, "O Lord, my birth is now sanctified and my family tree of contamination. Now that you both have come here, my forefathers, the demigods and the great sages, are certainly all satisfied with me. You two lords are the ultimate cause of this entire universe. To bestow sustenance and prosperity upon this realm, you have descended with your plenary expansions. Because you are the well-wishing friends and supreme soul of the whole universe, you regard all with unbiased vision. Therefore, although you reciprocate your devotees' loving worship, you always remain equally disposed toward all living beings. Please order me, your servant, to do whatever you wish. To be engaged by you in some service is certainly a great blessing for anyone." Sukadeva Goswami continued, "O best of kings, having spoken these words, Sudama would understand what Krishna and Balaram wanted. Thus, with great pleasure, he presented them with garlands of fresh, fragrant flowers. Beautifully adorned with these garlands, Krishna and Balaram were delighted, and so were their companions. The two lords then offered the surrendered Sudama, who was bowing down before them, whatever benedictions he desired. Sudama chose unshakable devotion for Krishna, the supreme soul of all existence, friendship with his devotees, and transcendental compassion for all living beings. Not only did Lord Krishna grant Sudama these benedictions, but he also awarded him strength, long life, fame, beauty, and ever-increasing prosperity for his family. And then Krishna and his elder brother took their leave. Purport, we can see a clear difference between Lord Krishna's dealing with the nasty washerman and his dealings with the devotee florist Sudama. The Lord is as hard as a thunderbolt for those who defy him, and as soft as a rose for those who surrender to him. Wherefore we should all sincerely surrender to Lord Krishna, since that is clearly in our self-interest. Now send the purports of the humble servants of his divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to 10th Canto, 41st chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Krishna and Balaram Enter Mathura. So we have many descriptions here of the response of the people of Mathura to Krishna arriving and seeing him. So after Krishna and Balaram arrived, they were curious to see the city of Mathura, because they had been living in the village and the forest. So they went out to view various things. And then we have a whole description of how people responded when they saw them. And it is obvious that they already knew Krishna and Balaram were the Supreme Lords. But nevertheless, the response is that, for instance, of the women, is that they were attracted by his beauty more than anything else. And there's an expression of their love for him in Madhurya Rasa. We see that they responded more or less like the gopis. They put their clothes on backwards, their ornaments on backwards, etc., whatever like that. Makeup on one eye, etc. So this is very similar to the response of the gopis when Krishna played his flute and they went off to the forest. So, in other words, the young women of Mathura were attracted to Krishna in much the same way. But, of course, also the difference is there is that they also see them as Supreme Lord, whereas the gopis don't see Krishna as Supreme Lord. So apart from the women, of course, we have brahmanas welcoming Krishna and other people as well, crowds. And then we have particular instances of the different persons like the tailor and the garland maker who offered Krishna garlands and cloth ornaments. And then we have the other example of the washerman who offended Krishna and insulted him. So when Krishna asked for the clothes, then he refused, and he actually threatened Krishna. So then Krishna responded by cutting his head off. But for the most part, we see Krishna and Balaram responded to the devotion of the different people of Mathura. These were not particularly we don't know who they were, but no one outstanding was in this group. So we have brahmanas and women of Mathura, etc. But they were all very devotional. So we see the particular response at the end here of the garland maker. So devoted he was that he didn't even want to ask for anything. So the response he gave was actually a response in pure devotion. So it's a very, very appropriate response for a person who practices pure bhakti. So he says, I don't really want anything, but what he wants is devotion for the Lord. Friendship with his devotees. And compassion for all of the entities. So this is the only type of benediction that a devotee actually asks for. He doesn't ask for things for himself, except for devotion to the Lord. May we have service to the Lord, etc. So this is the request that the devotee can make. As we see in the nectar devotion, it is anya abhilashita shunya, devoid of other desires. So the desire to serve the Lord and please the Lord is acceptable desire. Anukulyan Krishna Anusilanam. We serve the Lord or cultivate our relationship with the Lord in a very favorable way, in a very positive way, with affection. So that type of desire to wanting to serve the Lord more and more is accepted. Other desires are not accepted. That is, desires for ourselves or other people. However, then we have an exception. One can have similar desires for pleasing devotees as for pleasing the Lord. So that's also acceptable. If it is not, they're not devotees but pleasing materialists, then that is not good, or pleasing family members, etc. But if it's for pleasing the devotees, service to the devotees, then that is also permissible. So, therefore, we have a definition of Krishna Anusilanam, Anukulyena Krishna Anusilanam. So, of course, it means Krishna, but then our commentators say not only Krishna, of course, all the forms of the Lord, whether it's Ram or Vishnu or Nrsimhadev or whatever, it's all bhakti. So it's all permissible, although Krishna is the most perfect form. Still, any form of the Lord is included when we say Krishna Anusilanam. But then he says also it means the devotees. So not just the Lord and all those other forms, not Krishna and all, but all the devotees as well. And later on in the Nectar Devotion, it's explained, Rupa Goswami explains that all these angas of bhakti can be performed for the devotees as well as the Supreme Lord. So we have Vandanam and Sravanam, Kirtanam, etc. So mainly they apply to the Supreme Lord, but they all also can apply to the devotees of the Lord. And of course we see that in how the great devotees are glorified. So we have Gajendra's glorification or Hanuman's glorification or whatever like that. So that's a type of kirtan. It's not the Lord, but it is kirtan of a great devotee. So therefore, the devotees also are a very important element in bhakti. And those who realize that and accept that are actually advanced devotees. Those who are kanishtas do not recognize devotees. They appreciate the Lord in the temple. That's all. Those who are the madhyamas, they appreciate the role of the devotees and how the devotees are the medium by which we get bhakti and we increase our bhakti. So therefore, it is advised one should be friendly with the devotees. And we avoid the materialists, and we preach to the innocent people. So, this recognition of friendship with devotees as an important element of bhakti is a sign that he's quite advanced to make such a request. And then we see transcendental compassion for all living entities, to show doya to other jivas. Of course, we know that the ultimate doya is to also give them knowledge of Krishna. That's the highest knowledge. So other types of knowledge are all secondary, compassion are all secondary to that. So in other words, he also realizes that the nature of the devotee is to elevate other jivas in their spiritual life. So this is also another important element in bhakti. So though we see that the definition of bhakti is cultivating a relationship with Krishna, and of course that also includes his devotees, whereas all living entities who are not devotees included there, it's not. But then we see also that in the qualities of the devotee, mentioned in when we talk about subhada, the second quality of bhakti, the bestowing auspiciousness, one of the characteristics is that the devotee has affection for all living entities. And of course, corresponding to that, the living entities have affection for the devotee. So this is considered to be the principal quality of the devotee, that he is compassionate to the other living entities. But that compassion is expressed differently in different cases. So we have avoiding preaching to the demons, friendly with the devotees, preaching to the innocent people. This is how the compassion is showed to the various persons. So therefore it's a natural quality of the devotee that he has this compassion. Apart from that, of course, that he wants to engage them in devotional service, he also sees that all the jivas are expansions, amsas. They are all shaktis of the Lord, amsas of the Lord. So apart from their material bodies, they have very great similarity to each other. So we should not distinguish one body from the other so much as to see the underlying Atma within each individual. And we treat them all nicely. This, of course, is a quality of the Jnani also, or the Citta Pragya, who sees the elephant and the dog eater and the dog and the Brahmana and whatever all as one. He doesn't make any distinctions like that. So that's a praiseworthy quality for the Jnani. But again, the devotee also doesn't make profound distinctions based on bodies also. Of course, we also see that he does make some sort of distinction as a Madhyam Adhikari, because he doesn't preach to the animals and plants, but he preaches to the human beings, so we make a distinction there. And we preach to those who are favorable, and we don't preach to those who are not favorable, whatever like that. So there is some distinction within that also for the devotees as far as preaching is concerned. But as far as the general compassion, we realize that all the jivas are ultimately Atmas. So therefore, they are all the they say servants of the Supreme Lord in some way or other, directly or indirectly. Therefore, the devotees do not express the opposite, that is, hatred and violence, etc., towards living entities. They show compassion. We see within Dharma also, this is one of the principles, the 4 legs of Dharma, the bull. One of them is doya, compassion. That, of course, austerity, doya, etc. We can say these are material qualities in sattva, but at the same time, we can say this is a reflection of the spiritual qualities of the jiva once he's beyond his material designation. So a person in sattva realizes he is not the body, he is actually the Atma, and he's detached from material enjoyment. So therefore, he expresses doya and non-violence, etc. So these are favorable for devotional development, even though they may be material qualities. So ultimately, of course, though the devotee realizes all jivas are Atmas, etc., his main compassion is to elevate those who are qualified in devotional service and to do preaching activities. So that's how his main compassion is directed. And for that reason, we see that sometimes Prabhupada criticizes those people involved in mundane charitable activities. Now, of course, that's part of Dharma, we see. Doya, etc., there is part of Dharma. And we see within the Varnashram system that one should do site services as build roads, give education, etc., do all these different types of charitable activities for society in general. In this way, the person becomes less selfish, and he's willing to give his money for other creatures and human beings, etc. So it's encouraged within the Varnashram system. But it's, of course, an aspect of Dharma, which gives you punya, which is material. If we only concentrate on that, then we become sattvic people, that's all. We don't become transcendental, we become sattvic people. So the purpose of the devotee is not to bind himself in the material world with charitable activities, but rather to go beyond the material world. So he can express his compassion for all living entities, not by doing those works, but by doing spiritual activities for other living entities, spiritual compassion. And that way there's no bondage at all. So the activity of preaching is compassionate, but it doesn't have the negative aspect of material bondage in it. So therefore, that's a superior type of activity for the devotee. Therefore, we find here that the garland maker was a very advanced devotee because he was expressing pure bhakti and expressing the quality of the devotee, that is compassion for all living entities, etc. So he was his response to the Supreme Lord by offering the garlands was one of pure bhakti, and this was very pleasing to the Supreme Lord. So therefore, Krishna, of course, gave him those benedictions, but beyond that, then he gave him the material benedictions like strength, long life, fame, beauty, prosperity, money, etc., etc. So without asking, the Lord supplied everything to him. So that is the nature of the devotee. He does not request things from the Lord, but the Lord gives to the devotee what is required for his well-being in the material world. He supplies him what is necessary for that devotee without the devotee asking for anything. We see a later example in the other Sudama or Sridama, the Brahmana, who went to Krishna with the grains of chipped rice in his cloth, and he didn't want to ask Krishna for anything, and he also didn't want to give the rice to him because it was such a low type of gift. So Krishna took it and ate it, but the Brahmana was completely afraid of asking for anything. He didn't want to ask for anything. He was simply pleased with meeting Krishna. But then Krishna supplied everything to him. He gave him the palace and whatever, and his wife became very beautiful, and he got all of his necessary things to survive in this material world in a very nice way. So the Lord supplies to the devotee what is necessary for his sustenance in this world. This is the Lord's compassion to the devotee. Of course, we also see the Lord may do the opposite and take everything away from a devotee. So sometimes he does that also. If he thinks that the wealth and whatever are detriments for the devotee surrendering, then he may take those things away. And we see that in the case of the Avanti Brahmana, who was kicked out of his house by his family members eventually. He lost his wealth and he was kicked out of the house, and then he surrendered to the Lord because he had nothing anyway. So the Lord responds to different devotees in different ways. And often he does this. He gives them the great material benedictions as well as spiritual benedictions, even though the Sudama didn't want anything material, but the Lord gave it to him as a reward for his pure bhakti. Other persons who are not doing pure bhakti may also get these things. They ask for them and the Lord may give them to him. So we have the person suffering in the material world who wants to get rid of his suffering. We have the person who is wants wealth. So the Lord gives these things to these devotees, even though they're not doing pure bhakti. So in this way, their faith increases. And if they get the association of people practicing pure bhakti, then they can advance beyond this mixed bhakti and they can get to a higher level. So that is the strategy of the Lord. If he sees that a person does have strong devotion, but he also has some danger in material attachment, then he may take everything away from that devotee, as we see some cases with Avanti Brahmana. And we see the Brahmana did not lose his faith. Rather, he completely surrendered to the Lord. So this was a great advantage for him in his advancement. So the Lord will respond differently to different types of people in mixed bhakti and in pure bhakti. And even in pure bhakti, he responds differently according to the situation. But in any case, the person practicing pure bhakti is not concerned with these secondary things that he gets. His main concern is the service to the Supreme Lord. So Sudama's main benediction that he asked for here was unshakable devotion for Krishna. Bhakti, to have bhakti which is very, very achala, very, very fixed, unwavering bhakti to the Supreme Lord. That was his basic desire. So this is what the devotee wants. Everything else the devotee is not really attached to, but the Lord may give these things to him. So in this way, the Lord is the benedictor of everyone. And he gives all benedictions. He gives all spiritual benedictions from the position in the spiritual world with Sarupya, Sloka, etc. He can give liberation, impersonal liberation. And he can give anything in the material world. So according to the devotees, he may give different things at different times to them, according to their desires and according to how we think that they should advance.
So, I think 12th canto, I think it's mentioned that, that daya is one of the leg of the dharma. Yeah, so in Kali Yuga normally, this daya is reducing, means people are not showing that much. Daya means compassion. But you're saying this is mentioned is one of the leg of the dharma, but you're saying this is material. It's material. Dharma, showing compassion is a material.
Yeah.
It's sattva.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how dharma can be material?
Dharma?
Dharma can be material. You're saying
dharma we see is that when we talk about dharma, we're talking about varnashram system, rules and regulations for maintaining your body. That's dharma. And going to Svargaloka, doing punyas to go to Svargaloka, that's part of dharma. So that's all material. Paro dharma is bhakti, so that's non-material. But karma yoga is material. Basically, its goal is elevation in the material world. So, of course, we have artha dharma kama, which is basically what happens. You do pious activities to get your artha and your kama. When we get to sattva, then we want to detach ourselves from the material world, so we do jnana and astanga yoga, moksha. These activities in themselves are material also. They're sattvic activities. And therefore, one rejects them when one gets liberation. Because you cannot have any sattva in the state of moksha, which is beyond gunas. So the process of jnana is actually a material process also in sattva. So the only process which is not in the gunas is bhakti. That is nirguna. So the qualities that are cultivated in dharma are therefore material. They may be sattvic, but still they're material. But it says the devotee develops all good qualities.
So sattva also good qualities, you can say. This daya also good qualities.
But then, if the devotee develops sattva qualities, then he gets bound to the material world. So how is that good for advancement in bhakti? So therefore, good qualities must not just mean sattvic, it must mean transcendental qualities. Krishna has qualities, but they're not sattvic.
But he also has this daya quality.
But it's not sattvic. Krishna doesn't have any material qualities. He's beyond the gunas. So his sattva, or his doya, must be something different. Similarly, the doya of the devotee must be something different. So subhada means also development of good qualities. The devotee develops good qualities. But he does not develop material qualities. Otherwise, bhakti would give you material results and bondage to the material world. But bhakti is just to give you something else. So therefore, when we talk about developing good qualities, it must mean spiritual qualities, like Krishna's qualities. So the devotee develops transcendental qualities, which look kind of similar to material qualities like sense control, etc., 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 but it's all centered around Krishna, and therefore it's non-material.
So, can you say this showing compassion toward the living entities is also not a material? Showing compassion, like doing preaching activities.
Preaching is spiritual. It's a type of kirtan.
The person who is preaching, he might not be in the spiritual stage. He's a beginner maybe, but still he's giving holy name or something.
Well, the activity itself is spiritual, so it spiritualizes the person.
So if
Bhakti itself is a spiritual activity.
So if that is the case, so can you compare this daya or mercy or compassion is like a rain? When rain comes, it doesn't make any difference where to shower, where not to shower. It shower everywhere. So can you say mercy also like this? That whoever has this mercy, he's supposed to shower it everywhere without distinguishing which is qualified, which is not qualified.
Yeah, well that's the general quality of the devotee. He wants to give everywhere, but then we have also the thing, don't preach to the faithless persons. So then he must make some sort of distinctions. So the unrestricted is we can let everyone hear the holy name. That's the rain going everywhere. But then the activity is that we only preach to the people with faith. So then it's not everywhere. Some persons are qualified, so we preach to those persons. So that is a more limited type of mercy, we can say. So we have the general one that goes everywhere, and then we have the more particular one.
And the doubt is, Manas, you are giving example of like a Sudama, that Sudama, Brahmana Sudama. Although Sudama came to meet Krishna with some cheap rice, and Krishna gave him kingdom also. So can you say that Krishna showing his mercy by giving kingdom is not material, that kingdom, because previously he was a poor man, he was always remembering Krishna, but now after getting kingdom, now his responsibility increased, means he has to look after the kingdom and he might forget.
He didn't actually give him a kingdom, he gave him a big palace. He didn't say he had a whole country to rule or anything like that, because he was a Brahmana, so he obviously cannot rule anything, but he had a big palace house with servants, etc. That's all. And obviously he got the intelligence to use those properly in the devotional service of the Lord, not to misuse them or whatever. So Krishna supplied what was necessary for him to pass his life in this world.
So it is all Krishna's plan, we can say.
Jai. 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 Hari Hari Hari.